The Great Hall of Orion Prime was unlike any place a human could imagine. The floor was made of shining crystal that reflected the light of 1,000 small orbs. Floating in the air, massive banners of alien symbols hung from the high ceiling, each one representing a different world in the Galactic Council. Delegates sat in wide rows, their forms so different that a first-time visitor might feel as if they had stepped into a dream. Some had wings that shimmered like glass, some had smooth metallic skin, and others looked like walking plants, their leaves swaying even though there was no wind. In the center of the hall stood Chancellor Varric, the leader of the council. He was tall and thin, with deep green skin and eyes like polished stone. His voice carried through the room with perfect clarity as he spoke. Today we address a matter that affects the safety of all member worlds. This is not a small decision. It will shape our future and the way we deal with a certain species from this day forward. That species is humanity. At the mention of the word, every delegate turned their gaze toward the center stage. The few humans present felt the weight of those stares. They were not invited as guests this time, but as subjects of judgment. Varric continued. After reviewing countless reports from across the galaxy, the Council declares that humans are to be classified as a class Omega species. This classification means one thing: humans are too dangerous to remain unmonitored. From this day, their activities will be restricted. Their expansion will be watched. Their influence will be contained. A wave of murmurs swept across the hall. Some alien delegates nodded in agreement, while others frowned. In the human section, Ambassador Helen from Earth clenched her hands together, trying to stay calm. She knew this day might come, but hearing the words still felt like a blow to the Chestone delegate. A large insect-like being named Croft rose from his seat and clicked his mandibles before speaking. I have seen it myself. My crew rescued 3 humans from a wreck on a frozen moon. Within hours they had built shelters from scrap metal, started a fire using parts of the ship, and found food in a place where none should exist. Their minds adapt fast. Their will to live is unmatched. This is why they are dangerous. Another delegate, a bird-like representative named Lorani, fluffed her feathers and added her own story. One of my colonies faced a predator that had ruled the area for centuries. Our defenses failed, and we faced ruin. A small group of human settlers joined our fight. Within a week, they trapped the beast using nothing but nets, rope, and teamwork. It was a victory, yes, but it showed me how quickly they can change the balance of power. The hall grew restless as more voices joined in, each telling a story of human survival and cleverness. Some tales were about great kindness, others about fierce defense, but every story ended with the same truth. Humans had a way of winning against impossible odds. Ambassador Helen listened quietly, her mind already working. She knew that humans were not perfect, but she also knew that their strength was not born from cruelty. It came from something deeper, something the Council seemed to overlook. Still, she could not speak until it was her turn. Chancellor Varric raised his hand, and the room fell silent again. We must not forget history. Every species here has fought to survive, but humans have done so with a speed and adaptability we have never seen. Some of you call this a gift. I call it a risk. A spark can give warmth, but it can also burn an entire city. Outside the hall, news drones hovered in the corridors, broadcasting every word to the galaxy. On Earth, people watched with mixed emotions. Some were angry, calling the Council unfair. Others felt proud that their abilities had been noticed, even if in fear. In cities and small towns, people gathered in public squares, watching the live feeds on giant screens. The words "humans are too dangerous" flashed in alien script. Alongside human language, Echelon's assistant, a young diplomat named Daniel, leaned closer and whispered, "They have already made their decision. This is not a hearing. This is a sentence." Helen kept her eyes forward. Sentences can be challenged. We just have to find the right way. Far above Orion Prime, in orbit, the Council's defense fleet kept watch. Their ships were sleek and silver, each one armed with enough firepower to deter any attack. This was a reminder to all species that the Council's word carried not just political weight, but military strength. Humans had their own fleet, but compared to the Council's combined force, It was like a candle before a storm back in the hall. The Chancellor announced that the next phase of the meeting would involve presenting detailed evidence of human actions across the galaxy. The screens around the chamber lit up, showing recordings of human crews repairing alien ships under enemy fire, surviving in the depths of space without proper equipment, and leading desperate evacuations from collapsing colonies. Each image told the same story. Humans would not give up. For many in the hall, this was proof of danger. For others, it was proof of hope. And for some, it was proof that the galaxy might need humans more than it feared them. When the Chancellor called for a short recess, Helen stepped out into the side corridor. The air was cooler there, and the voices of the delegates became a soft background noise. She looked out through a tall window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was Earth, still unaware of how close it was to being locked away from a wider galaxy. Daniel joined her, his face tense. They will not listen to words alone. We need allies in that room, and we need them fast. Helen nodded. Then we find those who have seen our true nature, the ones we help when no one else would, the ones who know that dangerous is not the same as evil. As the break ended, Helen returned to her seat. The great hall filled again with voices. Banners swayed under the light of the floating orbs, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. She straightened her back, ready to speak when the moment came, knowing that every word she said could change the course of human history in the galaxy. When the recess ended, the great hall of the Galactic Council filled once more. The floating light orbs glowed brighter, and the large screens hanging above the delegates flickered to life. Chancellor Varric stepped forward again, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the crystal floor. We now present the evidence, he said, his deep voice echoing in the vast chamber. Let each witness speak so the truth is clear to all. The first to rise was Croth, the insect-like delegate who had already spoken earlier. His glossy shell reflected the light as he walked to the center platform. I commanded the rescue of 3 humans from the wreck of the ship Starfinder on the frozen moon of Velnor, he began. Our ship was damaged in a storm, yet they were the ones who took charge. They used broken panels as shelter walls. They took wires from destroyed consoles and turned them into heating coils. They even hunted the razor birds of Velnor with sharpened rods. I tell you, they survived where no one else could, and they did it without hesitation. This is why I fear them. Such skill is rare, and when it grows unchecked, it can become a weapon. The room was silent for a moment before murmurs began to spread. Some nodded in agreement while others seemed unsure. Next, Lorani, the bird-like representative, stepped forward. Her long feathers shimmered under the hall lights. On the colony world of Hithar, my people were under siege by a beast called the Shadow Stalker. It had wiped out entire defense patrols. We were losing hope. Then a small group of human settlers offered to help. They built traps using nets, heavy rocks, and even the roots of local trees. They studied the creature's movements for days. When it returned, they brought it down without a single casualty. We celebrated the victory. But I knew then that humans are not only survivors, they are planners. They can change the balance of power in ways that no other species can match. The screen above showed grainy footage from Hithar. Viewers could see humans working alongside the bird-like colonists, setting traps, and pulling the huge predator into a pit. The sound of cheers filled the recording, but in the council chamber, the mood remained tense. After Lorani returned to her seat, another voice called out. This time it was Everon, a tall, silver-skinned delegate from the Hydron League. His voice was calm but carried an edge. My fleet encountered humans during the Zathar outbreak. We had been trapped in quarantine for weeks. Supplies were gone. Spirits were low. The humans found a way to grow food inside sealed carters using water from coolant tanks. They created medicine from basic chemicals and plants they had brought from their homeworld. They gave us more than survival. They gave us hope. And yet, that is the danger. When you can inspire loyalty and unity even among strangers, you can gain influence over any people. Influence can topple governments without a single shot fired. The Chancellor allowed each story to play on the screens, footage of humans repairing ships during meteor storms, guiding alien refugees through asteroid belts, and even facing down pirate fleets with clever tactics filled the air. Each clip was proof of skill and adaptability. To those who feared change, it was proof of danger ambassador. Helen sat quietly, watching the faces of the delegates. She noticed some leaning forward, deeply engaged in the stories, while others folded their arms. Already convinced of the council's verdict, Daniel, her young assistant, leaned close and whispered, "Look at the smaller delegations, the ones from the outer colonies. They are interested. They have seen humans as allies before. We need to talk to them." Helen gave a slight nod but kept her eyes forward. Speaking too soon could weaken her position. She would wait for her momenthy next. Witness was unexpected. A short, plant-like being named Ruvia stepped to the center. Its leafy body rustled softly as it spoke. "I will tell a different story. My world, Kelfer, was hit by solar storms that destroyed our farming systems. No council fleet came to help. We were forgotten. But a human merchant ship passed through. They could have moved on, yet they stayed. They built shelters for our seedlings. They shared their food until our fields could grow again. Humans are dangerous, yes, but not for the reasons most say here today. They are dangerous because they make others believe in them. And belief is the strongest force in the galaxy." That statement made several delegates glance at one another. It was not an accusation. It was a warning of a different kind. Chancellor Varric listened to every word without showing emotion. When the last witness stepped down, he addressed the hall. "You have heard the stories. You have seen the images. Humans adapt to any threat. They turn weakness into strength. They forge alliances without needing force. For some, this is hope. For others, this is the spark before a blaze. The council must decide which it will be." The hall erupted into mixed voices. Some shouted that humans should be placed under strict travel limits. Others argued for cautious partnership. A few even suggested welcoming them fully into the council. Though these voices were quickly drowned out, Thelen took this chance to stand. "Chancellor, esteemed delegate," she began, her tone clear but controlled. "You speak of our adaptability as if it were a weapon. It is not. It is the way we survive. Every one of your species has its own gifts. Some can breathe in toxic air. Some can live in molten heat. Our gift is to face the unknown and make it our home. We do not wish to conquer. We wish to connect." Varric tilted his head slightly but did not interrupt. Helen pressed on. "You say we inspire loyalty. You say we unite those we meet. I ask you, is this a danger, or is this what the galaxy needs in times of chaos?" For a moment, the chamber was still. Even the floating orbs seemed to hover without movement. Then voices rose again, but this time there was a different tone. Not all were convinced, but some were beginning to question the decision they had been ready to accept. Daniel's eyes met Helen's, and he gave the smallest nod. A seed had been planted. Now it was a matter of keeping it alive until the final vote. Chancellor closed the session for the day. "We will meet again tomorrow. In that time, I urge you to consider not only what you have heard, but what it means for our future. This matter is far from settled." As the delegates filed out, Helen caught sight of a reptilian figure standing near the exit. It was Sorka, a diplomat from the Drassian Union, known for his sharp mind and sharp words. He gave Helen a slow, deliberate nod before leaving the hall. She knew this was an unspoken signal. There was more to this decision than what was being shown in public outside. The stars of ZerathPrime glittered like a sea of fire. Ships came and went from the station, each carrying whispers of the council's debate. Across the galaxy, millions watched and waited to see if humanity's place among the stars would be sealed with chains, or lifted with respectful, and walked toward her quarters with Daniel at her side, her mind already turning. Tomorrow, she would need allies, and tomorrow, the truth behind the council's fear might begin to surface. The next morning, the great hall of the Galactic Council was quieter than usual. Delegates spoke in low voices, glancing toward the center stage where today's session would begin. The floating orbs gave off a softer light, as if the entire chamber was holding its breath. Outside, ZerathPrime's sun cast long beams through the crystal walls, painting shifting patterns across the floor. Ambassador Helen sat at her desk in the human section, going over her notes. She had not slept much all night. She thought about the stories shared yesterday and the faces of the delegates. She knew some were still firm in their belief that humans were a danger, but others had begun to doubt. Today was her chance to turn doubt into trust, and he arrived with a small tablet in hand. I spoke with some of the outer colony delegates, he whispered. They remember the times humans helped their people. They are willing to speak on our behalf if you can make the council listen. Helen gave a small nod. Then today, we make them listen. Chancellor Varric entered, his tall frame moving with slow precision. When he reached the center, his voice carried through the hall. Delegates, we continue our discussion on the classification of humanity. Yesterday, you heard stories of their adaptability and influence. Today, we will hear their defense. All eyes turned to Helen. She stood and walked to the center platform. Her steps were calm, but inside her chest, her heart pounded. She looked at the sea of alien faces before her. Some watched with curiosity, some with suspicion, and a few with quiet hope. Honored delegates, she began, her voice steady. I have listened to your stories. They speak of courage, of skill, and of survival, but they are told as warnings. I ask you to consider another way to see them. She took a slow breath before continuing. You say humans adapt quickly, that we find a way through every challenge. This is true, but it is not because we seek to dominate. It is because our history has demanded it. On Earth, storms, droughts, and disasters shaped us. We learn to endure, not to rule. Every species here has a gift. Some are born with strength, some with speed. Our gift is the ability to face the unknown and not turn away. A murmur passed through the hall. Helen pressed on, her words careful, but firm. You say we inspire loyalty and unite those we meet. You call this a threat. I say it is the heart of cooperation. When one of your worlds is in need, who comes first? Often, it is a human crew, not because we are paid to, but because we see need and answer it. This is not conquest. This is connection. She stepped closer to the front of the platform, meeting the gaze of the delegates in the first rows. Some of you know this because you have lived it. When your farms failed, we shared our food. When your cities burned, we stood beside you to rebuild. We have fought beside you against pirates, against storms, against disease. These were not acts of war. They were acts of friendship. From the Hydron League section, Everon rose slightly from his seat, as if to speak, but then stopped. His silver eyes were fixed on Helen. Studying her, you fear that our ability to survive makes us dangerous, Helen said, her voice rising slightly. But ask yourself, is it not more dangerous to remove those who would stand with you when the darkness comes? When disaster strikes, it is not power that saves lives, it is trust. For a moment, the chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the floating lights. Helen could see in the faces of some delegates that her words had reached them, but she knew not all would be convinced so easily. Varric tilted his head, his green eyes unreadable. You speak well, Ambassador, he said slowly, but words do not erase risk. Your species has also fought wars. You have built weapons capable of destroying worlds. You have taken what you needed from your own planet without always thinking of the cost. These are not small concerns. Helen nodded. You are right. We have made mistakes. We have learned from them. Every world here has its history of conflict and failure. But we are not here to pretend we are perfect. We are here to show that we have the will to grow better and the courage to help others do the same. A few delegates exchanged glances. This was not the defiance they had expected. It was something quieter but strong. Girthen, to the surprise of many, Sorka, the reptilian diplomat from the Dracian Union, stood. His voice was deep and rough. My people were once viewed as dangerous as well. We were warriors before we were allies. It was humans who stood beside us when the council questioned our place. I do not forget that this caused a stir in the hall. Support from Sorka meant influence among several neutral factions. Slarani, the bird-like delegate, rose next. I still believe humans can change the balance of power, but I also believe that balance can be changed for the better. What I saw on Hithar was not a threat. It was a partnership. Varric's eyes narrowed slightly, but he allowed the voices to continue. One by one, a few small world delegates spoke in favor of humanity. recalling times when human aid had saved lives. Without asking for anything in return, Helen remained still, letting their words fill the hall. She knew it was better for the council to hear this from others than from herself only. Varric raised his hand for silence. The council will not decide today. More evidence will be considered, more questions will be asked, but I acknowledge that some voices here see value where others see risk. This will be weighed carefully. As the session closed, Helen returned to her seat. Daniel leaned in. That went better than I expected. You had them listening. Helen allowed herself a small smile. Listening is the first step. The next is making sure they act on what they heard. As the delegates filed out, Sorka approached her. His reptilian eyes glinted under the hall lights. You spoke well, Ambassador. But words will not be enough. There are forces here who want your people restricted for reasons that have nothing to do with danger. If you want to win, you must be ready to expose them. Helen's gaze sharpened. Then tell me where to start. Sorka gave a slow nod. Meet me after the evening meal. I will explain what I know. When he left, Helen stood for a moment in the emptying hall, watching the banners sway gently from the high ceiling. The fight was far from over. If Sorka was right, the council's decision was not about fear of humanity's nature. It was about something deeper. And if she could uncover it, she might have the key to saving humanity's place among the stars. The evening meal on Orion Prime was unlike any gathering on Earth. The grand dining hall curved like a crescent moon, its walls made of transparent crystal so diners could watch the ships gliding through the station's outer docking rings. Long tables stretched across the room, each one filled with delegates and aides from different worlds. The air carried a mix of scents, spices from the desert planets, sweet floral notes from garden worlds, and the metallic tang of nutrient steam used by aquatic species. Ambassador Helen entered with Daniel at her side. She kept her expression calm, though her thoughts were busy. Sorka had told her to meet after the meal. Until then, she needed to remain visible, but not draw unwanted attention. The wrong glance or the wrong word could alert the wrong ears. Delegates were already seated in clusters that reflected quiet alliances. The core world leaders sat near the front, their banners high and bright. The smaller worlds filled the outer tables, their banners smaller, but their voices no less important. Helen noticed that those from the outer colonies gave her small nods. As she passed, they were not open supporters yet, but they were watching. And Daniel found seats near a table shared by Ruvia, the plant-like delegate from Kelfer, and a pair of feline-featured representatives from the Nyrene cluster. Polite greetings were exchanged, followed by small talk about the day's debates. Helen let the conversation stay light, but she could feel the eyes of others drifting toward her from time to time. When the meal ended, Helen excused herself. Sorka waited near one of the side doors, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. Without a word, he led her down a quieter corridor lit by soft blue lights. The hum of the main hall faded until all that remained was the low sound of distant machinery. They stopped in a private observation room that overlooked Orion Prime's northern docking bay. A few cargo ships drifted past the glass. Sorka turned to face her, his voice low. You spoke well today. You may have convinced some, but the core of this decision is not about your people's nature. He said. Helen studied his face. Then what? Is it about resources? Sorka replied. Earth has rare minerals found in very few places. Some of your medical research has also drawn interest from certain factions. These things cannot be taken by force without angering the outer colonies. But if you are declared too dangerous, restrictions will be placed, trade will be monitored, supplies will be routed through council-controlled channels. Slowly, control over your resources will pass into their hands. Helen's jaw tightened. So the fear they speak of is a shield for greed. Sorka nodded once. Not all are part of this, but enough. The ruling blocks from the inner systems see humans as an opportunity. If they combine you with rules and treaties under the name of safety, they can take what they want without open conflict. Daniel, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. If that is true, we need proof. Without it, any accusation we make will be dismissed as desperation. You are correct, Sorka said, and proof will not be easy to find. Those who plan such things do not leave open records, but I know of one place where you may start. A council storage wing 2 levels below the main chamber. It holds sealed reports and communication logs from trade committees. Some of those may show the connection between the restrictions they plan and the mineral and research requests already made. Helen considered this. If these records exist, how do we get to them without being noticed? A faint smile touched Sorka's face. The same way humans survive on frozen moons and hunt predators with rope. You adapt. You will need a reason to be in that wing, and you will need help from someone who knows its layout. Helen glanced toward Daniel, who was already tapping notes into his tablet. I think I know someone, he said, a systems technician from the Hydron League. She owes us a favor from the outbreak on Zather. If she can give us access codes, we could search the files during a low-activity cycle. Do not wait too long, Sorka warned. The vote on your classification will be set within days. With that, he stepped away, blending into the dim corridor until only the sound of his clawed feet faded into the distance. Helen and Daniel returned to their quarters without speaking much. The walls of ZerathPrime were said to have ears, and this was not the time to take chances. Once inside, Daniel locked the door and activated a local interference field to block listening device. Helen sat at the small desk, her eyes fixed on the glowing city beyond the window. Ships move like slow stars across the black. If this is really about control, we need to do more than defend ourselves, she said. We need to show the council the truth before they cast their votes. Daniel nodded. Then tomorrow, I will reach out to the technician. If she agrees, we can try to access the storage wing the day after. Helen looked at him for a moment, her expression firm. No mistakes, Daniel. If they catch us, they will say it is proof of our untrustworthy nature. We have to be invisible that night. She found it hard to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the council banners swaying in the hall and heard the chancellor's voice declaring humans to dangerous. But now there was something else. The knowledge that behind those words was a network of greed and ambition. Next morning, the council sessions resumed. Helen noticed Sorka seated farther back than usual, his expression unreadable. The chancellor opened with a summary of the previous days, then moved on to new reports. As speakers took the floor, Helen let her mind drift toward the plan forming in her thoughts, and Daniel would have only one chance to get into the storage wing without raising alarms. If they succeeded, they might find records that link certain delegates to trade agreements and resource claims targeting Earth. If they failed, their enemies would have the excuse they needed to seal humanity's fate. When the session ended, for midday rest, Daniel leaned close and whispered. She agreed. The technician will send the access codes tonight. Tomorrow at second cycle, the wing will be quiet. That's when we go. Helen gave a small nod, her mind already counting the hours. The path ahead was dangerous, but not because of the title the council had given her people. It was dangerous because they were about to step directly into the heart of the council's secrets, and if they made it out with the truth, the entire debate might change. ZerathPrime's artificial night cycle cast the station in a dim silver glow. Most delegates had retreated to their quarters, and the grand halls were quiet except for the occasional hum of cleaning drones gliding along the floors. The perfect time for a move. Helen stood by the door of her quarters, dressed not in her usual ambassador attire but in a plain maintenance worker's uniform. The loose fabric and muted colors helped her blend into the background. Daniel wore the same, carrying a small tool case to complete the disguise. On his wrist was a thin data band, glowing faintly with the stolen access codes from the Hydron. Technician's second cycle has started, Daniel whispered. The storage wing should have only 2 guards, both on rotation. Helen nodded, keeping her voice low. Then let's not waste time. They stepped into the corridor and moved with steady, unhurried steps. Acting as if they belonged was the first rule of not being noticed. They passed a pair of night shift engineers without drawing a second glance. The air was cooler this deep in the station, and the lights gave off a faint blue tint, casting long shadows against the wall. Storage wing entrance was guarded by a tall, armored insectoid officer. Its multifaceted eyes shifted toward them as they approached. Helen let Daniel step forward, holding out a small panel from the tool case. Maintenance. Check for the environmental regulators, Daniel said with practiced ease. Work order was logged earlier today. The guard tapped its wrist pad, scanning the order. The access code flashed green, and the officer stepped aside without another word. Helen and Daniel entered the wing, the heavy door sliding shut behind them. Inside, the air was still and cool. Long rows of sealed data crates stretched in every direction, each labeled with strings of alien symbols. Soft lights glowed above, and the faint hum of climate systems filled the silence. Somewhere in here were the files they needed. Trade Committee reports and sealed communication. Sane activated his data band, projecting a small map into the air. Storage Cluster D7. That's where committee archives are kept. They moved quickly, weaving between the rows until they reached a set of tall crates. Helen scanned the labels until her gaze fell on one marked with a sequence matching the committee's record code. Daniel linked his band to the crate's access port. The lock clicked, and the front panel slid open with a faint hiss of air. Inside were rows of data slates, stacked neatly in protective cases. Helen pulled one free and tapped it awake. Lines of text in mixed languages filled the screen. At first, it seemed like ordinary trade records, mineral shipments, research grants, fleet maintenance costs, but then she noticed a pattern. Several of the largest mineral requests came from worlds closely aligned with the Chancellor's bloc, and many were marked with pending restrictions for Earth-based suppliers. This is it, Helen said quietly. They've been planning to route our resources through their own trade hubs for months. Daniel pulled up another slate and scrolled through, and here, medical research licensing. They're preparing to transfer Earth's medical patents to safe custodians. They would own our discoveries. Helen felt a cold weight settle in her chest. They'll control not just our materials, but our knowledge. And they'll claim it's for galactic safety. Suddenly, the soft hum of the wing changed. Heavy footsteps echoed down the aisle. The guard rotation had shifted early. Daniel quickly returned the slates and closed the crate. Helen powered down the map and stepped into the shadowed space between two storage rows. The sound of armored boots grew louder. A beam of white light swept across the crates. Searching, Helen held her breath. The guard's voice spoke into a comm unit. Wing secure. No unauthorized activity detected. The light passed over their hiding spot once, twice, then moved away. The footsteps faded toward the far door. Only when the sound was gone did Helen exhale. We have enough to prove it, Daniel whispered. Let's get out before our luck runs out. They retraced their path toward the entrance. The same insectoid officer stood there, its attention fixed on a data pad. When Daniel handed back the work order panel, the guard barely looked up. Moments later, they were back in the corridor, walking at the same steady pace as before. When they reached their quarters, Helen locked the door and activated the interference field. Daniel placed the copied files on the desk, their faint blue light reflecting in Helen's eyes. This changes everything, she said. We can show the Council that this is not about safety. It's about control. Daniel hesitated. Will they listen? Even with proof, the core worlds hold most of the votes. Helen's gaze sharpened. If we can't win in the chamber, we win in the open. Let the outer colonies see this. Let every neutral world know what's being done. Pressure from the outside can be stronger than votes on the inside. The next morning, before the session began, Helen sent encrypted copies of the files to trusted contacts across the galaxy, Ruvia of Kelfer, the Hydron technician, and even a few independent trade guild leaders. By the time she stepped into the Great Hall, she knew the truth was already spreading. Chancellor began the day with an unexpected announcement. To better assess humanity's classification, the Council has arranged a trial of skill and survival. The humans will demonstrate their abilities in a controlled environment. Before all delegates, a murmur swept through the hall. Helen kept her expression neutral, though inside she recognized the move for what it was. A last attempt to frame human adaptability as a threat. In front of the entire council, Varick's voice rose. The location will be Kresner, a world known for its storms and predators. The test will be observed by all interested parties. Success will prove your skill. Failure will confirm your limits. Helen stepped forward. If this is to be a true measure, then it must be open to all. Let representatives from other species join us. Let the council see how we act when survival is shared. A brief pause followed. Varric's lips curved slightly. Very well. You may have volunteers that afternoon. The roster was set. Helen, Daniel, and to other humans from the diplomatic fleet would be sent to Kresner, alongside mixed alien observers. It was not just a challenge, it was a stage. And Helen knew that how they handled it could either save humanity's place in the galaxy or seal the Council's judgmentus. The preparation teams gathered supplies. Helen looked out at the stars beyond Arion Prime. Somewhere in that darkness was Kresner, waiting with its storms and dangers. She was not afraid of the planet. She was ready for the trial, but she also knew the real test was not survival. It was showing the galaxy what humanity truly was. The surface of Kresner stretched endlessly, a harsh landscape of jagged rocks and swirling storms. Winds roared across the plains, carrying fine sand that burned like fire against exposed surfaces. Strange creatures with glowing eyes moved in the distance, their shapes twisting between rock formations. The planet was designed to test strength and endurance. It was perfect for the Council's purpose. Helen, Daniel, and their human team stepped onto the rocky ground from the drop ship. They were equipped with survival suits designed for extreme conditions. Alien observers followed closely, some skeptical, others curious. Helen could feel their eyes watching every move. This world is dangerous. But we will adapt, Helen said quietly to her team. Keep calm, work together, and pay attention. That is how we survived. The first challenge was immediate. A sudden storm swept across the plateau. Visibility dropped to almost zero as wind tore through the team. The aliens panicked, some stumbling, others shouting instructions they could not follow. The humans moved steadily, securing each other with tethers and guiding the aliens to shelter. Behind large rock formations, Daniel shouted over the wind. The shelters are unstable. We can reinforce them with the supplies from the drop ship. Helen nodded. Use teamwork. Check every structure before we enter in minutes. The humans had turned jagged rocks and cargo panels into reinforced shelters. The aliens began to follow their lead. For the first time, observers saw humans not just as individuals who could survive, but as leaders who could organize and protect others. As the storm passed, the team faced another test, a deep ravine, with a river of molten liquid that glowed bright orange. Sensors detected the movement of predators nearby. The humans studied the terrain, evaluating options. Instead of rushing across or trying to fight the creatures, they built a makeshift bridge using cargo beams and ropes from the drop ship. They guided the alien observers across safely, using hand signals and careful coordination of the bird-like delegates, who had remained skeptical, whispered to her companion. I thought they would charge blindly. They are teaching us to survive next. The team reached the Kresner forest, strange plants with thorn vines twisted across the paths. The humans carefully mapped safe passages, noting plants that were poisonous, and water sources that were usable. When a young alien observer panicked after being trapped in vines, Helen calmly directed the humans to cut the path safely and reassure the observer. The act was simple, yet powerful. Even in survival, humans showed compassion as the day progressed. Other challenges followed: sudden sinkholes, aggressive local predators, and harsh temperature swings. Each time, the humans relied on strategy, communication, and mutual support. Rather than brute force, slowly, the alien observers began to take notes, mimicking their techniques. The Council's idea of a dangerous display was turning into a demonstration of human skill and empathy. By the evening, the team reached the final obstacle, a deep canyon separating them from the extraction point. Storm clouds gathered again, and the predators of Kresner were close. Helen gathered the humans and alien observers. This is the final step. Work together. Every action matters. Watch each other's back. The crossing was tense. Humans supported weaker aliens, placed warning markers for predators, and used the environment to their advantage. The team moved as one. When a predator leaped from the shadows, humans distracted it while others crossed safely. Not a single life was lost. The observation data recorded every move. Every decision was strategic, cooperative, and disciplined. When the team reached the extraction point, relief washed over them. They were exhausted, but triumphant. Helen glanced at the alien observers. They were no longer simply watching humans. They were learning from them, respecting them, even admiring them. The labels of danger had begun to shift in perception. Adaptability and strength were now paired with guidance, care, and leadership back on the dropship. Daniel turned to Helen. "We did more than survive. They will report this to the council." Helen nodded. "Yes, and they cannot deny what they saw. Survival alone is skill. Survival with others in mind shows character. That is what they feared. Not our ability, but our ability to lead with purpose." The report that followed in the council chamber was detailed. Observers described humans as not only clever and resilient, but capable of turning hostile environments into safe zones for others. They noted the patience, calmness, and careful coordination every delegate had to record. Every action documentation. Clerveric reviewed the footage, his expression unreadable. For hours, he watched the humans move through Kresner's challenges. For hours, he heard the alien observers' reports, and for the first time, the label to dangers felt inadequate. Helen's words about cooperation and empathy were no longer abstract. They were visible, undeniable, and undeniable in proof. In private, Sorka approached Helen. "They cannot ignore this," he said. "Even the hardliners will hesitate now. You have shown more than survival. You have shown leadership." Helen allowed herself a small smile. It was never about brute force. It was about how humans act when others depend on them. Varric finally addressed the council. "We have observed the trial on Kresner. Humans have faced conditions that would challenge any species. They have survived, yes, but more importantly, they have protected those who are weaker. They have led those who were unsure. They have shown skill, patience, and care beyond mere instinct." A murmur spread through the delegates. Some whispered agreement, others hesitation. It was clear the classification would be reconsidered. Helen remained in the room quietly. The battle had shifted. The evidence she had gathered from the council storage wing, combined with the demonstration on Kresner, created an undeniable picture. Humans were not reckless or merely adaptable. They were responsible, strategic, and compassionate, qualities that no council could easily dismiss. Varric continued. "The question remains, is this dangerous, or is this a strength that the galaxy can benefit from? We must consider not only the past and present, but the future. Humans can survive anything. They can inspire others. They can unite worlds in ways few can imagine. Are we prepared to ignore such potential, or shall we embrace it?" Delegates looked at one another. Voices rose, some in support, some cautious. But the tone had shifted. Fear no longer dominated the discussion. Respect and curiosity were now present. Helen felt Daniel's hand brush hers lightly. "We did it," he whispered. "The tide has turned." She nodded, though her eyes remained on the holographic footage of Kresner. The planet was harsh, unforgiving, and dangerous. But the humans had faced it with intelligence and care. That image would stay in the minds of the council for a long time. By the end of the day, the vote for humanity's classification was set. The council would meet again. But the outcome was no longer certain. Humans had proven themselves in every way that mattered, not only to survive, but to act wisely when others depended on them. The stories of past heroics combined with this trial had reshaped opinions across the galaxy. Helen and Daniel returned to their quarters, exhausted but satisfied. Outside, the stars of ZerathPrime twinkled cold and distant. Humanity's fight was far from over, but for the first time, the galaxy had witnessed the true measure of their strength. Sorka's voice came through a communicator. "The council will be difficult to sway completely, but you have shifted the debate. Be ready for tomorrow. The final discussions will decide your place among the stars." Helen looked out at the stars, her gaze steady. "We are ready. We always have been." The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled to capacity. Delegates from hundreds of worlds had gathered for the final session on humanity's classification. Floating light orbs hovered above, casting soft light on the banners of countless civilizations. For weeks, the debate had consumed the galaxy, and now, all eyes were on the humans who had challenged the council's fears. An ambition ambassador. Helen stood at her platform with Daniel by her side. They were joined by Sorka, Ruvia, and a few other representatives who had witnessed the Kresner trial. behind her. Screens displayed footage of the human survival, the strategic crossings, the shelters, and the coordination with alien observers. Every action was proof of skill, care, and leadership. Varick approached the center, his usual calm and deliberate demeanor commanding attention. Delegates, we have reached the final discussion regarding humanity's classification. The evidence before us is clear. Humans have faced extreme challenges, demonstrated adaptability, and displayed leadership in ways previously unseen among council members. A murmur spread through the hall. Some delegates whispered in approval. Others still had doubts. Varick raised his hands to bring silence. The question is not whether humans can survive. He continued, the question is whether their abilities present a threat or an opportunity. You have all seen the trials on Kresner. You have read the records showing how some factions sought to control Earth's resources. Under the guise of safety, you have observed humans acting with intelligence, courage, and compassion. I ask each delegate to consider this carefully before casting your vote. Lorani, the bird-like representative, was first to speak. Her long feathers shimmered as she stepped forward. I have watched humans closely on Hithar and during the Kresner trial. They do not act recklessly. They consider the needs of others. Their strength is not in domination, but in guidance and cooperation. For this reason, I vote that humanity shall remain free to travel and participate fully in the Council. Ruviov. Kelfer stepped forward next. My people owe a great debt to humans. They have helped us when no one else could. We have witnessed their leadership and kindness. Any claim of danger is outweighed by the benefits of their presence among the stars. I vote to recognize humanity as a full and equal member of the Council. Sorka followed. As a species, humans have proven not only resilience, but wisdom. To fear them is to fear the future. I vote for their acceptance. The vote continued, and one by one, delegates from smaller colonies and neutral systems spoke. Each speech praised humans for their skill, empathy, and cooperative spirit. Even some from core worlds, previously hesitant, could not ignore the undeniable proof presented by the Kresner trial and the documents from the storage wing. The tide of opinion had clearly shifted. Helen watched quietly, her hands clasped in front of her. She did not speak, allowing the delegates to come to their conclusions without influence. She knew her role was to demonstrate, not to lecture. The work had been done. The evidence had been present. Definitely, Chancellor Varick called for a summary of the vote. By majority consensus, the Council recognizes humanity as a capable and responsible species. Humans are free to travel, trade, and participate fully in the Council's activities. Restrictions previously suggested are hereby lifted, and no measures shall be taken to limit their influence unjustly. A wave of relief passed through the human delegation. Daniel grinned, though he kept his expression controlled. Round the hall, murmurs of approval and surprise spread. Some delegates were clapping quietly, while others nodded in respect. The decision was unprecedented, but it was earned. Helen stepped forward. Esteemed delegates, thank you for your consideration. Humans will honor this trust. We will continue to act with responsibility and to cooperate with all who wish to build a better future. The galaxy is vast, and challenges will come, but together, we can face them. We are grateful for this opportunity to serve and to contribute. A few delegates approached afterward, offering personal congratulations. The Nyrene representatives, who had been quietly skeptical during the trial, shook hands with Helen and Daniel. You have shown what it means to lead without fear, one said. Your people have earned our respect, even some from the inner worlds, known for their strict adherence to hierarchy and control, came forward. Perhaps we misjudged. A core delegate admitted, humans are not dangerous in the way we thought. They are powerful in a way that benefits everyone. Helen nodded and smiled. She felt the weight of the past weeks lift slightly. The struggle was not over. Maintaining humanity's place in the galaxy would require vigilance, diplomacy, and courage. But for now, the Council had seen the truth. Humanity had earned its recognition outside the Council chamber. Daniel and Helen walked toward the docking ring. Ships of all sizes moved against the backdrop of distant stars. It feels different, Daniel said quietly. Like we belong here now, Helen looked at the vastness of space. We do belong. The galaxy is full of dangers, but also opportunities. Today was about proving we can face both without losing who we are. A message arrived from Sorka. Celebrate, but do not forget, there are always those who will question humans. Remain ready, remain wise. Helen smiled. We will. But today, humanity is free, and we will use that freedom well back in their quarters. The human team gathered with small tokens from delegates who had supported them. A crystal from Kelfer, a feather from Lorani, a small device from Sorka. These gestures were more than gifts. They were signs of trust and respect. Daniel looked around at the group. We started as visitors, observers, even subjects of fear. Now, we are recognized equals. This changes everything. Helen nodded. Yes, and it also reminds us of what we must do. We must continue to lead, to help, and to inspire. That is what earned us this place. That is how we keep it later, as the human delegation prepared to return to their ship. Helen took one last look at the stars beyond Arion Prime. She thought of Earth, of its struggles, of the countless humans who had faced danger and uncertainty with courage and hope. The galaxy had witnessed that courage. The galaxy had seen their strength. And for the first time, the title of danger was replaced with the title of respect. Council session ended with a sense of cautious optimism. Delegates returned to their homes, carrying reports and stories that would shape conversations for decades. Humanity's influence was now official, and their example would inspire other species. Fear had been transformed into admiration. Helen and Daniel boarded their ship. The engines humming softly, they looked at each other, understanding the weight of what had been accomplished. Humanity had not only survived the test of the Council, but had also reshaped its perception of what it meant to be strong. Incapably as the ship lifted from Arion Prime, moving into the deep black of space, Helen reflected quietly. We are a small species on a small planet in a vast galaxy, but we have something more: courage, intelligence, and the will to act for good. That is what makes us human. That is why the galaxy will listen. Daniel smiled. And they finally have the stars stretched endlessly before them. Unknown worlds, challenges, and adventures waited. Humanity was no longer a species to be feared. They were a species to be respected. And in the heart of every human, there was a quiet certainty. They were ready for whatever came next. For the first time in Council history, a species had been judged dangerous, tested, and proven to be not a threat, but a beacon of hope and resilience. Humanity had won its place among the stars, not by domination or force, but by showing the galaxy the best of what it could be. Helen looked at the black expanse outside the viewport and whispered, "This is only the beginning." The ship glided forward, carrying humanity into its new era among the stars. Allies were made, respect was earned, and the galaxy had witnessed the power of intelligence, courage, and compassion. Humans were no longer defined by fear, but by what they could achieve together. Their story had begun anew,